Okay, let's jump right in. Global healthcare logistics, they've completely transformed recently. We are literally more connected than ever, with these massive networks just moving vital equipment across oceans in a matter of days. But today we're unpacking a really massive economic friction point in this explainer, the medical device trade dilemma. And look, this isn't just some abstract macroeconomic shift, right? It's a high-stakes collision. We're talking about the push for affordable global healthcare slamming right into the survival of domestic businesses.
Picture this for a second. A huge shipping container rolls into a busy port, just packed to the absolute brim with low-cost healthcare tools. We're talking vital stuff for patient care. Everything from your basic syringes and surgical masks, all the way up to complex monitoring equipment. Now, on one hand, getting these supplies at a steep discount, that's a massive win for driving down those incredibly exorbitant spiraling costs of healthcare. But it forces us to ask a really tough question. What actually happens when this absolute flood of affordable supplies threatens local manufacturing jobs? It's a stark paradox, isn't it? Like, we all desperately want cheaper healthcare to help out patients and providers, but we also want robust, thriving local economies. And when these two things clash, well, it creates a serious dilemma with basically no easy answers.
Section 1. The Medical Device Trade Dilemma. Here we're looking at a global marketplace desperately trying to balance two massive priorities that are, frankly, on a total collision course.
Moving into Section 2. Rise of ASEAN imports. To really grasp the scale of the domestic worry here, we first need to look at exactly where these super competitive products are actually coming from. So we are talking about ASEAN nations. This economic bloc has rapidly evolved into an absolute regional manufacturing powerhouse, and we aren't just talking about basic assembly lines here anymore. Thanks to highly optimized supply chains, incredible regional coordination, and just super aggressive scaling, they're exporting this massive wave of medical devices at a literal fraction of the traditional cost. These nations have invested so heavily in infrastructure designed specifically to dominate export markets. I mean, they can produce and ship high volumes of medical equipment with a level of efficiency that is completely reshaping global pricing benchmarks. Make no mistake, this isn't just some temporary surge. It actually represents a fundamental structural shift in where the world sources its healthcare tools.
Now, the direct benefit of these low-cost ASEAN imports is honestly undeniable. Lower costs stretch hospital budgets further, and that expands access to patient care. Think about it. When a hospital system can buy thousands of sterile instruments for pennies on the dollar compared to what they paid just a few years ago, that frees up critical capital for other life-saving investments. You know, things like hiring new staff or funding advanced therapies. But there's a flip side, and that is the intense pressure placed squarely on domestic companies. They are finding it nearly impossible to match these imported price points while keeping their local operations running. Between the local overhead costs, the strict regulatory compliance tied to domestic production, and just the sheer economies of scale achieved overseas, it creates an incredibly uneven playing field. So it's this really high-stakes balancing act. How do you maximize healthcare affordability for the masses while making sure domestic industries don't just, well, completely collapse under the weight of this unbeatable international pricing?
Which brings us to Section 3. Domestic manufacturers feel the pinch. Because it's one thing to talk about global trade in the abstract, right? But it's entirely different when it starts hitting the factory floors and payrolls right in your own backyard.
Domestic manufacturers are basically caught in a perfect storm right now. The sheer influx of these low-cost alternatives is creating this really intense price undercutting across the entire market. Just imagine being a local supplier. You've provided reliable equipment to your regional hospitals for decades, and suddenly you are faced with overseas competitors offering the exact same specifications for 30, maybe even 40% less. I mean, when a hospital procurement manager is staring down shrinking budgets and sees two identical tools with vastly different price tags, the local option is almost always left on the shelf. And because domestic companies simply can't match the baseline economic factors of international manufacturing, whether we're talking facility costs, supply network density, or just operational scaling, they're just watching their local market share rapidly slip away. And here's the real kicker. When market share drops, so does the capital you need to innovate. It leads to this vicious cycle that seriously threatens the long-term viability of entire local business sectors.
Let's look at Section 4, weighing cost versus local production. The absolutely crucial point we have to weigh here is this fundamental economic trade-off. We need to shift our view from just short-term savings to long-term strategic resilience. So is the absolute lowest price always the best deal for a domestic economy? This right here is the core friction of modern globalized trade. Because when we save a few dollars on a medical device today, we really have to ask ourselves, what hidden costs are we paying when it comes to local innovation and manufacturing independence tomorrow? Think about it. If a domestic market completely loses its ability to produce its own essential medical supplies, it becomes entirely dependent on international supply lines. And as we've all seen recently, those lines can be severely disrupted by global crises, shipping bottlenecks, or sudden geopolitical shifts. As ASEAN manufacturing continues this incredibly impressive rise and really cement its role as a global supplier, this dilemma is only going to deepen. It forces us to take a hard look and decide exactly what kind of economic resilience we actually want to build for the future. Well, thanks for joining me to unpack all of this today. Keep questioning the systems around you, and I will catch you in the next Explainers.